Hi everybody, so my name is Luis Sanchez, and this is...
My name is Luke Pelagio.
And we're going to be talking about a little bit about our culture and also about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think kind of the first thing I want to ask you, like, where are you from? Like, tell me a little bit about your culture.
Thanks for asking, Luis. I was born in Sacramento, California, lived there until I was 5, moved to Hawaii at 5 years old, came to Oregon at 9. I've been here for 15 years. My family is from Brazil, so I'm half Brazilian, half American, white, Caucasian. Mom's side of the family, Brazil. Dad's side of the family, here in America. There's so much more to that, although I'll ask Luis now. Where are you from, Luis?
Totally. So I'm born in LA. My dad is Mexican and my mom's Salvadorian. I think, and we moved here to Oregon when I was like 6 years old, specifically here in Southern Oregon. So I've pretty much been raised here. I think I consider myself an Oregonian more than a Californian. But I definitely culture is always important. I think it's important to stay connected to your roots and connected to who you are, and make sure that the community that you live in knows that value. You have something to bring to the table, and it's your culture, right? I think culture is super strong. And what are some important things about being maybe Brazilian that you really love about yourself?
Well, speaking of that, my grandma she grew up in the Amazon rainforest. So if all of you can imagine what it would be like to grow up in a jungle, per se, the Amazon rainforest, my grandma grew up there. My great-grandfather built a civilization in the rainforest. And one reason why my mom moved to America from Brazil was to find a better opportunity. I feel like that's why a lot of people come to America from a different country, because they want to find more opportunity. They think life will be better here than where they were. Life in Brazil is a lot harder than life here. So that's, I'm grateful to be here. I'm so thankful to be here. Although I think a lot of people have the wrong perception. They look at America and they say there's all this equal opportunity, equal employment. And we, Luis and I, are going to talk about how this opportunity aspect relates to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Luis, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your background about being El Salvadorian, maybe why your family came here, how you got here, why you came here, just like how my family came here.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think one of the biggest keys about diversity, equity, inclusion is a lot of people think about equality when they think about DEI. And equality basically means that one approach is good for everybody, right? So you can do one blanket thing and everybody's going to accept that. And the basis of really DEI is saying, hey, no, actually people have different needs, people have different wants, and people need to feel connected in different ways. And so the diversity aspect of it, I think, is kind of key in growing up here in Southern Oregon. Is, it's a majority white, community, but there are pockets of, different nationalities and different cultures within that. And here in Southern Oregon, those communities are very strong. And I think the biggest key is equity versus equality. And when you're thinking about employment, or when you're thinking about, going to school or going to college, it's a little bit different. I think it's a little bit more challenging when, you do see yourself as a first generation, college student trying to do these things for the first time, when other families have maybe had 3 or 4 generations in college, right?
Absolutely.
So, and even kind of one of the, I guess I could talk about a super kind of sensitive subject within that is equality and equity is, I'm a freelance designer or content creator on the side, and I did a project maybe I think it was about 2 years ago, where I pitched a project to a company using my portfolio, and I had a friend who was white pitch the same project to the same company with my portfolio. I never got a response.
What?
And my friend got the response and got the gig.
Oh my gosh, dude. That sucks, bro. I would be so upset about that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, right? We talk about equality, and we pitched it the same exact way. We did the same exact thing. We did it in a way that the only difference was my name, right? And so the equity portion is, I didn't get that opportunity simply because they screened my name, right? And they had some preconceived notion about who I am, and they were more drawn to the white name as the subject of them getting an opportunity to get that job. And so to give you a little bit of background, so I work at Access, which is a nonprofit here in Southern Oregon. I do marketing and I do the IT side, all the technology.
How long have you worked at Access for, Luis?
So actually just at a year right now. So April was a year, yeah. So
awesome.
I also am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion committee within the organization.
Wow.
And I think that really the biggest importance of that conversation is saying, okay, us as an organization, we have to really dig into ourselves, who we are and who we serve. And if we're going to say that we serve our community, we have to look at those underrepresented communities that are normally overlooked, right? And we have to say, okay, maybe we haven't done the best things that we can to connect with these communities. And maybe there's more we can do in studying the best way to communicate, the best way to provide services, and the best way to, fulfill our mission as an organization. And that's, for me, the biggest importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion is how can you implement it into community organizations that have a huge impact within the area that you live.
So quick question about that, Luis. How do you think, since you are the chair of the DEI committee at Access, what would you say is one way that Access could better serve underrepresented communities?
Yeah, so typically a lot of people think of like underrepresented communities as culturally based, right?
Yeah, and hold on, what is an underrepresented community? What is that?
Yeah, so it's essentially just like a minority group of people who typically are overlooked by different services and programs that the community has to offer. So in this case, it could be the Latinx community, but it could also be the LGBTQA plus community. It could also be the population of teachers. It could be the population of single parent households. So these are all subgroups within a community that may not have the same opportunity to get services that others do. So it can be even like accessibility, right? Like, hey, maybe so-and-so doesn't have a ramp to access their building for somebody in a wheelchair, right? That's another community within that group. So I think the biggest challenge is there's always a lot more to that melting pot than you think. And there's always a lot more groups than you think, right?
And I think one reason why there are all these underrepresented communities that aren't getting the help that they need, they're not getting the help that they need in the way that they should.
Exactly.
Primarily because, fun fact, 6% of all Fortune 500 companies in America, the leader, the CEO, 6% of all the CEOs do not have a minority ethnic background at all. So I think one way to increase DEI in job scenes, job environments, in the communities that we live in, to better help with these underrepresented groups that Luis was just talking about, is to find a way to have minority ethnic backgrounds in leadership positions.
Absolutely.
So Luis, how can companies like Access, a nonprofit, or companies in general, find a way to incorporate and bring minority ethnic backgrounds into these leadership positions? How can they do that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things is obviously having people of color or people of different lived experiences and roles of leadership, right? There's a difference between you getting a DEI group together that's all specifically one group of people. If it's all male, right? It's really hard to find the connection to the community that you're not serving if you all have the same mind state. So by having people of color or people of other communities within leadership, we have different perspectives. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that having a diverse organization or diverse leadership adds value. Like, it really truly adds value into who you are as an organization. It provides more opportunities to connect with these communities, right?
Statistically, companies and organizations, groups that have minority ethnic background leadership at high levels, or any type of leadership within the company, end up producing higher quality decision making. They have better quality decisions. They're able to come together with more efficiency. This is research that I looked up a little while ago, probably within the last week, just to be able to prepare for this project. So decision making is increased. The quality of decisions are better.
Yeah, because conflict is a good thing, right? There's value to conflict and value to different perspectives. So just because everybody in the room decides on something in the first go doesn't mean it's the best decision you can make as an organization. But if you're able to have positive conflict, your outcome could be a lot better than that, right? You could be totally missing an entire group of people that you could be serving simply because you didn't have the necessary conflict to realize that.
And I think a lot of organizations don't realize that they don't have this kind of diversity. I feel like a lot of CEOs might subconsciously understand that their company isn't representing a lot of various diverse backgrounds, but I feel like in general, people don't realize that there is a lack of diversity.
Yeah.
So one way to increase an understanding of DEI is what's it called, Luis? They have diversity assessment tools.
Yeah, basically.
So it's like a survey.
Yeah. So you really, I think part of the process of increasing DEI awareness is realizing that you're not DEI aware. Right? So really, the process is to really, here's where we think we are, here's where we really are, and here's where we want to be. So you have this process, it's kind of fluctuation that it's a lot of self-awareness, and you build more empathy, and you build that key knowledge about what is really being more diverse, how can we be more inclusive to our community, and also how can we be more equitable. So how can we approach our services in different ways that people can actually access them, right? So if we have a lot of seniors, maybe the best way to do that is by having more people on our phones. Or if we have a lot of Latinx community members needing our services, maybe we actually have more resources in Spanish. Maybe if it's the LGBTQIA plus community, maybe they feel uncomfortable going into our facility for certain A or B factors. Okay, here's different methods of how we can deliver our services, right? So that all comes with the assessment. That all comes with realizing I don't provide these things and I really should. So you can do surveys, you can do kind of snapshots of different demographics within your organization to say, hey, this is where we are. Do some training. Okay, this is where we really are. Like, now that you're a little bit more aware about DEI, like, you realize that we're not where we really think we are. And then you really focus on the improvement of that. And I think that's the key piece of that is you have to break yourself down to build yourself up.
Luis, another question about that. How can we get these organizations and companies to implement these diversity assessment tools? How can we say, hey, this is something you should do. It'll help your company. You would benefit from it. You should do this. You should take this survey. Everyone on your board should take this survey. How can we get them to actually do that?
I mean, with a lot of board of directors or leadership, you have to see the return on investment, right? So if you're saying, hey, like, this can actually help your organization in the long run by these certain return on investment opportunities, right? Show the value. What is the value that this opportunity is going to add?
Interesting.
And you have to prepare them to have those hard conversations. I think with DI, there's always really, really hard conversations that will create conflict, and that might really make some people mad. But that's part of the process. And that helps you kind of figure out your organization's true mind state, right? So I think it's important to just start, make it a part of your organization's strategic planning to say, hey, we're going to focus on this for the next 18 to 24 to 36 months, and we're going to know that this process is going to be hard, but we know the value of including this process into our workflow.
That's good.
And you start with those surveys, and then you start with some training. It's you can kind of work yourself through that process.
That's really good, Luis. Back to opportunity. we're all looking for ways to include others, to make our world more diverse. If our world is more diverse with more equity, more equality, more diversity, if America can get to that point, we really would be a stronger community where we all support each other. A lot of groups aren't getting the support they need. And this is one way that you're saying, Luis, that these underrepresented communities can get the support they need. They can get the help they need. They won't be afraid to reach out to Access, for example, and say, hey, I need some help. So would you say that a lot of people in the Rogue Valley, the valley we live in, Luis, in Medford, Talon, Ashland, Phoenix, maybe even Grants Pass, no, that's Josephine County. So let's talk about Jackson County. Would you say that there are actually a lot of these underrepresented groups who are reluctant to going to Access and saying, hey, I need some help. Can you please help me?
Yeah, and I think there is, but I also think there's a group of people that may not just know about us because we're not creating the outreach for them to be that aware that we're even there to provide services for them, right?
Okay.
So there is some reluctancy because maybe they don't feel included in the community that we serve, right? And maybe they just don't know who we are. So there's that big opportunity of we can actually help more people by creating a safer place for them to go. And I think if we talk, say, Jackson County, the communities I feel are strong within them, but I don't think organizations are necessarily putting importance to making this an effort, right? I don't think they're really putting it as a focus to say, hey, we're going to really focus on being a more DEI aware organization for our community. I think more metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Portland are definitely on way ahead of the game on these things. But I think as Southern Oregon, as Jackson County, most organizations are behind on this. And I think moving forward in the next 1 to 3 to 5 years, it has to really become a focus. If we can make people feel included instead of divided, if we can make people get the assistance they need, it makes them stronger, right? It makes our community stronger. It builds us to be a powerhouse of a nation, and as a community, the community has always come together. And if we can actually include all those communities that live within that conversation, it can be a lot stronger than what it is now.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah,
that's really great.
Cool.
Yeah, is there anything else, any last thoughts on your mind, Luis, in terms of DEI in Jackson County, in the world we live in? Is there anything else you want to add before we conclude our topic of DEI?
So I think, if you're more interested in this topic, there's a lot of research about it out there. You can look at maybe Harvard's diversity, equity and inclusion plan. Access is currently working on its own. SOU has a really great program in place where we can really start to learn about what SOU is doing to make sure that the sub-communities within SOU feel included in the conversation. But thank you so much. We're glad you guys could be part of this conversation, and thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. And have a good one.